Hello friends, welcome once again to the Biology Forum. Hope you're finding this lecture series very interesting because indeed we are discussing a very interesting and an important topic, that is endocrine glands and their secretions, the hormones. Let us continue with this lecture series with two other glands by talking about each of them in detail. In this video, we'll be discussing about the pancreas and the adrenals, that is the adrenal glands. So let's start. I'd like to give a brief overview of what exactly this video has for you. We'll be talking about the pancreas gland in detail. We are more concerned about the endocrine part of the pancreas, so it is the islets of Langerhans, which we will be actually discussing in detail. The pancreatic hormones, insulin hormone in particular, the adrenal gland and its hormones. So let's start. First, we will talk about the pancreas. As I've already told you in the earlier lectures, that pancreas is a mixed kind of gland. So we also call it as a heterocrine or a mixocrine kind of a gland because it is a composite gland which acts both as an endocrine and an exocrine gland. It is a leaf-shaped gland present just behind the stomach, and if you can see this, you can see these ducts. This is the pancreatic duct which collects the secretions from the major part of the pancreas tissue. The endocrine part of the pancreas are called the islets of Langerhans because they form only about 1 to 2% of the entire tissue of the pancreas, and they are isolated in small groups throughout the pancreatic tissue. Hence the name islets of Langerhans. So they represent around 1 to 2% of the pancreatic tissue. In the entire pancreas, in the human pancreas, there are about 1 to 2 million islets of Langerhans spread all across the pancreatic tissue. The rest of it, that is the exocrine part, produces the pancreatic juice which will flow through the pancreatic duct into the duodenum, which aids the process of digestion. This is just one islet that has been magnified for you to understand. All around, this is the islet that we are seeing. Around it is the exocrine part of the pancreas made up of the acinar cells. They have a duct at the center, if you can see. Here is one islet which is made up of two major types of cells, the alpha cells and the beta cells. If you can see here, the beta cells are these light blue colored cells. Generally, they are in a cluster at the center of each islet, and the alpha cells surround the beta cells. There's a third type of cell also found, which are quite few in number, the delta cells. Now, the alpha cells which surround the beta cells, if you can see this islet here, they're surrounded, so well surrounded by capillaries. That means they are in constant or in close contact with blood capillaries so that they can pour their secretions into the blood. The alpha cells secrete the hormone glucagon. Beta cells secrete the hormone insulin. So let us talk about the hormones now. If you can see typical structure of the pancreas, if you can see, this is the various ducts coming from the exocrine part of the pancreas, moving into the main duct, which will then drain into the duodenum. Whereas we have isolated islets of Langerhans here and there, and if you can see, there are these blood capillaries in close contact with the islets. Yes. Now the glucagon which is, as I told you, secreted by the alpha cells of the islets of Langerhans, is a peptide hormone and plays an important role in maintaining normal blood sugar levels. In fact, both insulin and glucagon work together to maintain the glucose homeostasis. Now, how does glucagon act? It acts on the liver cells, that is the hepatocytes, and it stimulates glycogenolysis, resulting in increased blood sugar levels. Now I'll tell you exactly what happens. The liver cells basically store the excess glucose, it's a soluble kind of sugar, into an insoluble kind of sugar called as glycogen. And what does the glucagon do? Whenever the blood sugar level falls below the required amount, it will immediately act on the hepatocytes and will cause the hepatocytes to break down the glycogen. So there is glycogenolysis, splitting of glycogen, and it is converted into glucose and released into the blood. That is one way the level of blood glucose can be increased. Another way is it also stimulates gluconeogenesis. This is formation of new glucose. Glucose stands for glucose, neo is new, genesis is formation. So formation of new glucose also contributes to hyperglycemia, that is increasing blood sugar levels. So by glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis, glucagon basically acts to increase the blood glucose levels. It is also helpful in hyperglycemia. Another way it contributes is it reduces the cellular glucose uptake and utilization. So it prevents the other cells from taking up glucose. So as a result, glucose remains in the blood, its level increases in the blood, and that leads to hyperglycemia. So glucagon is a hyperglycemic hormone. Insulin is also a peptide hormone and also plays a major role in regulation of glucose homeostasis. So both the hormones secreted by the islets of Langerhans, especially alpha and beta cells, play an important role in glucose homeostasis. Now what does insulin do? We know that insulin reduces or lowers the blood glucose levels whenever it is above normal or goes on the higher value. Now how does this do? It acts on the hepatocytes too. So insulin will act on the cells of the liver and even the fat cells, that is the adipocytes, and it will enhance cellular glucose uptake. That means it will make these cells pick up the glucose, excess glucose that is present in the blood, and the hepatocytes will convert them into glycogen and store it in the cells for further use. This is how, to some extent, the blood glucose level is reduced. Secondly, it will stimulate the conversion of glucose into glycogen. So glycogenesis, this is exactly what it does, is it helps in, or it stimulates the formation of glycogen in the hepatocytes. So it favors glycogenesis. This brings about hypoglycemia. Another thing is it will increase the uptake of glucose by the cells of the body. So in that way too, the level of glucose falls down. Another way is it converts some amount of that glucose into fats which is stored in the body. That is why if we are constantly having a lot of sugary or sweet food for a long time, we tend to put on weight, because this is how the body tries to regulate the amount of glucose in the blood. The deficiency of insulin secretion in individuals causes prolonged hyperglycemia, because this entire process of glycogenesis and even cellular uptake of glucose by the cells reduces a lot. So the level of glucose in the blood will continue being on the higher level, and the person will have hyperglycemia, and that condition is known as diabetes mellitus, because diabetes means there will be lot of urine passed. Along with that, this urine will be tasting like honey, that is, it will be sweet, so that is mellitus. So diabetes mellitus is a condition seen when there is deficiency of insulin hormone secreted in an individual. This person will have frequent urination, so we call that as polyuria. Because of loss of water from the body, they'll keep feeling thirsty, so that is polydipsia. At the same time, they will be losing weight too. In spite of feeling very hungry and eating a lot of food, they tend to lose weight. So these are the typical symptoms, the characteristic symptoms of diabetes mellitus, though you may not find them in this characteristic way, but yes, and you will see that the blood glucose levels will be persistently high in a person with insufficient insulin secretion. Right. So that is about the pancreas. Let us talk about the next set of glands, the adrenal glands. The name itself is suggestive. Adrenal. Renal is relating to the kidneys, so they are placed over the kidneys. They are like a pair of cap-like glands on the anterior part of the kidneys. Now you have two types of tissues in the adrenal glands. One is a centrally located portion which we call as the adrenal medulla, and around it, surrounding it, you will have another layer called the adrenal cortex. So first let us talk about the adrenal cortex. Now the adrenal cortex, that is the tissue in the periphery of the adrenal gland, is divided into three layers. The innermost layer is called zona reticularis, it is a zone. The middle layer is called zona fasciculata, and the outermost layer is called the zona glomerulosa. Now this adrenal cortex secretes hormones which are called as corticoids. Now there are two varieties of corticoids secreted in the human body. One is the glucocorticoids and the other is the mineralocorticoids. The glucocorticoids, the name itself is suggestive, have something to do with blood glucose levels or your sugar. It stimulates, just like your glucagon, gluconeogenesis, that is new glucose formation, splitting of the fat or adipocytes, lipolysis, proteolysis, splitting of proteins, and it inhibits cellular uptake and utilization of the amino acids. So it will really lead to increase in the blood glucose levels to the glucocorticoids. The second type of hormone secreted by the adrenal cortex are the mineralocorticoids. They basically have their action on the sodium, potassium and other ions in our circulation. They also regulate balance of water and electrolytes in our body. So they are very much needed for the carbohydrate, protein, fat metabolism in our body, and also for salt and water balance in our body. Of this is the renal medulla, adrenal medulla, and this is the adrenal cortex. Right. Aldosterone is a very important mineralocorticoid. It acts mainly on the renal tubules and stimulates the reabsorption of sodium ions and water and excretion of potassium ions as well as phosphate ions. So it basically helps to maintain the electrolyte balance in our body, the body volume, osmotic pressure and blood pressure. So basically it will have a good effect on the fluid volume in our body, the volume of the electrolytes and salts in our blood, the osmotic pressure and blood pressure. Very important mineralocorticoid. Small amount of androgenic hormones are also secreted by the adrenal cortex, which play a role in some secondary sexual characteristics like growth of the axial hair, pubic hair and facial hair during puberty. So it is not just the hormones from our gonads, but also a small amount of androgenic hormones are secreted by our adrenal cortex, which lead to secondary sexual characteristics. The adrenal medulla, so we are talking about the middle portion of the adrenal gland, also secretes two hormones, adrenaline or epinephrine and noradrenaline or norepinephrine. These together, this group are called as catecholamines. Now the adrenaline is a very important hormone in our body because it is called the emergency hormone or hormone of fight or flight. Anytime a person is exposed to a stressful situation where you either need to act by fighting or fleeing from the situation, it is this adrenaline which helps you. It is secreted in large amounts by the adrenal medulla, goes into the circulation, and through it, it will help in increasing the heart rate, increasing the amount of blood moving in the circulation so that your muscles get ample oxygen. At the same time, your breathing rate, respiratory rate also increases so that more oxygen enters into your blood. So the muscles receive more oxygen as well as glucose, and they can either help or contract for fighting or for fleeing. A very, very important hormone in stressful situations. They increase the alertness, pupillary dilation, piloerection, sweating, etc. Both the catecholamines stimulate the breakdown of glycogen, which is stored in the hepatocytes, causing increased concentration of glucose in the blood. You have to remember this whenever there is breakdown of glycogen from the hepatocytes. It will get converted into glucose, and hence the blood glucose levels will always rise. Hope your doubts about the pancreas and the adrenal glands are clear. In case you still have some doubts, please ask your doubts in the comment section. I'll definitely answer them. If you like this series of videos, please subscribe, like, and share. Thank you so much.